Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where every day we explore how technology is transforming our lives, work, and world. And all washed down with a great human story too, proving that tech works best when it brings people together. And today's guest is Dean Guida, who officially launched enterprise software company Infragistics way back in 1989, when his small startup of just 10 people went head-to-head against Microsoft for a $300,000 deal and won. And since then, Dean has scaled his company to 250 employees across 6 countries, including a 75,000 square foot headquarters in New Jersey, all without ever accepting outside funding. And the company now boasts a client roster that includes 100% of the S&P 500. And this year, they've also launched an innovation fund and a lab to encourage entrepreneurism throughout his company. So it's an amazing story, so buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to New Jersey, where Dean is waiting to share his story. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
My name is Dean Guida. I'm the founder and CEO of Infragistics, and I started my company 32 years ago to build software to help application developers build their apps better, faster, more beautiful. And at Infragistics, we really care about simplicity and beauty. And so what we do is we build UI frameworks for professional developers on web, desktop, mobile. And so your data visualization, your grids, all the different UI interactions with a big focus on UX. So we built a whole platform for designers and developers to go from design to code and collaborate around user experience and UX so that they're delighting their customers. And that's what we're really focused on for the last 32 years. And perhaps we'll talk a little bit about it, but we've made a really big investment to move from developer tools to business tools, where we built Slingshot, which is a digital workplace that brings together everyone you work with data analytics, projects, chat, content. But myself, I'm a geek at heart. I love technology. I love software. I grew up in Miami, Florida, and ever since I was saving up to at 16, I was saving up to buy a car to take girls out, like a lot of young guys were thinking about. But instead, I bought one of the first IBM PCs, and I just loved that thing. And I taught myself to program, and I knew I was just going to be in the tech space since 16. And so I kind of come from the software development background, and really love design. Not a designer, but really appreciate the whole human-centered design and building to really delight and engage in the whole user experience. And it's a little bit of my background.
Love that. Incredibly cool story. But that's just scratching the surface, really, because I was doing a little bit of research on you, and I learned that you officially launched your enterprise software company, Infragistics, way back in 1989, when your small startup of just 10 people went head-to-head against Microsoft for a $300,000 deal with Philadelphia Conrail, I think it was. And you won. I mean, can you share that story?
Yeah, that was one of our first really big wins. And we bootstrapped ourselves. So from we never had any funding, and so everything matters. Like when you don't have funding, everything matters, and every customer win matters, and everything you do matters, and really focused on taking care of the customer. That's how we all get paid. More than anything matters. It's kind of like a value. But so what was happening at the time, technology was moving from DOS, character-based screens, to this whole Windows environment, GUI environment. And it was a big transition for programmers, because they had to learn to go from procedural programming to this kind of event-driven programming that a Windows user interface requires. And so at Conrail, they were looking at using, which is a big railroad company here in the US, they were looking to use Microsoft Visual Basic. And Microsoft flew their executives over to Redmond. And we were like a 2-hour drive from Philadelphia. And so I was driving in, meeting with them. And it came down to where with our tools, which allowed you to visually build your application and generate this code, and we were doing it in a language called C programming, which is a little bit more difficult language to program in. But yet, if you did program in it, you had amazing control, performance, but it was harder for developers to program in this language versus Visual Basic, which was this kind of 4GL WYSIWYG environment. And it came down to the final test was if this COBOL mainframe programmer could build in a day this set of requirements and screens with our tool, they would go with us. And so we were just sweating it. We were like, oh my God, I hope she can do it. And because the benefit was that if you can have the productivity and the skill set kind of coming over from this mainframe world, then you can go with the most powerful language being C, but have that productivity with our tooling. And we ended up winning, and against like all odds with Visual Basic is a great language, and Microsoft was so powerful, and we were a small startup, and we won. It was like one of our first big deals, and man, it just that gives you energy for the next 2 years. Of all the struggles that you have to have as an entrepreneur, and so it was a really big win for us. And Conrail ended up standardizing us and building all their software with our tools, and it went really well.
And Infragistics is known for providing tools and solutions to help accelerate application design. But I am conscious we'll have a lot of people listening outside of tech circles. There might be business leaders or decision makers that are tuning in and hearing about you for the first time. So can you introduce them to your company and share the kind of problems that you set out to solve for your customers with your technology?
Yeah, so we sell, like, our biggest segments that are our customers are other software companies. So you might have heard of like Intuit, TurboTax, Quicken, JDA, an accounting financial package. There's a lot of accounting financial packages use us. Charles Schwab, Fidelity, all these customer-facing financial trading platforms are really strong in the banking financial service. Pretty much almost all the top banks use our software to build their equity trading systems. And so we're really strong with other software companies building commercial apps that they sell. And what we do is we help development teams, professional development teams, build really performant, simple, and beautiful user interfaces, everything the user interacts with. And it is so expensive once you ship a product that has a poor usability, poor user experience, everywhere from hurting your own brand to really impacting the customer's productivity. And it costs almost 20 times as much money to fix some of these user experience issues once you're in market versus doing it early on in the design development phase. And so we really focus in on providing what's called these design systems, which is a whole set of user interface patterns and experiences and branded colors and fonts to take these design systems along with your favorite designer tool and blending it with an iterative development where you can get feedback on prototypes and workflows. And then ultimately we're generating production code. So we're combining both designers and users for user testing and virtual user testing, and our frameworks that help build that whole experience of the user interface, the application, all in one kind of digital product platform. And so that's what we focus on. And we're a global company. We have some of the biggest enterprises in Japan and Europe, South America, and here in the US using our software.
And before you came on the podcast, I was reading that your company now boasts a client roster that includes 100% of the S&P 500, including those big names, Intuit, Exxon, Morgan Stanley, etc. It's an incredible journey you've been on. So I'm curious, where do you go from here? What makes you jump out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, well, you have to love this business because we have to always innovate. I mean, when you build software tools for platforms that are constantly changing and then themselves innovating, we have to constantly see where's the opportunity for us to build on new technologies, new platforms to help developers, in their task of building applications. So we've had to build this whole culture of innovation and to kind of read and understand where the market's going, because we have to. The rate of change in the tech space is so fast, but for us, it's even faster because we have to build on top of these new technologies and to provide value to our designer and software developer customer base. So it's you have to love it. Like I said, like if you didn't love it, it's not a good business to be in because it's constant change. You build something great, customers love it, but then a competitor could leapfrog you, or technology changes and whatever you did is obsolete. So you're constantly having to refresh, and it's like organic. I mean, it's like lettuce. Like you have to keep nurturing it, and it goes bad on the vine. You keep at it, and so yeah, we all love it. I mean, it's kind of like a tribe of people that love building software and designing software and really seeing that our customers build beautiful and incredible apps. And so it starts with that. I love it, but it's a tough business.
And I'm glad you mentioned innovation there, because the events of the last 18 months combined with an economic downturn means that it's almost a catalyst for innovation. A lot of companies have to do more with less and are looking at different ways of working, embracing new ideas, etc. And innovation is so important. And that is one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast today. So can you tell me a little bit more about Infragistics' 50 million innovation fund and how that works?
Yeah, so we put together this $50 million fund to really fund entrepreneurship, ideas, and innovation, where some of the enemies of innovation is that, believe it or not, is having a big customer base, having a product in market, because you really have to address, it slows you down. So you have to address what all your customers want, incremental improvement, and you have happy customers, but it does stall the rate of innovation you can have. So what we did was we put together this fund that really celebrates the innovative and ideas to fund those ideas, which are pre-revenue, not core product line. And we have a process to go through to ensure that the vision, the product market fit, the value, the competitive advantage is there. But then it allows, with all those ingredients, to have the space to build out that idea and test it. And so it's allowed us to do that. We funded Indigo Design, which is our digital design platform that I talked a little bit about already, which brings together designers and developers and integrates with the tools they love in the design world with design systems and interactive, collaborative workspace to test out the prototypes and test with users, and then generate the code using, and everything that you built as a designer can then flow into actually be built by developers with our UI frameworks. And it funded that. It also funded a product for ours called Reveal, which is an embedded data analytic product that allows development teams to quickly have a modern cloud-based analytics dashboarding engine inside their application. And it funded Slingshot, which we're in public preview now, which is that digital workplace that pulls together what we kind of thought of, like our whole reason for building Slingshot was, after 30 years of struggling and winning and losing, what does it mean to run a high-performing team? And so we kind of came up with some principles. It means that everyone's in the know, everyone's aligned on the objective, You're using data to make decisions. You have accountability at the team and individual level, and everyone's in the know. And so we built Slingshot to incorporate those principles. And what you see in the market is there's certainly solutions for everything I just talked about: project management software, BI, dashboarding, data analytics software, chat software, content. There's all these pieces of software, but it's all disconnected. And so our thesis was like, if you put all those philosophies about running a high performing team, along with not having the app switch with all these different apps and having that productivity flow going from data insight to chat to work back plan, and just constantly collaborating and iterating on that. Like we think, we think we have a real winner here with Slingshot, but our innovation fund funded that. And if I could, a little bit longer-winded answer, but innovation is so core to everyone today, not just tech people. And some of the lessons that we've learned is that first you have to kind of create this trust with everyone, so that people feel comfortable with expressing their ideas, asking questions, asking for help. And that's like a foundation of just innovation, that you create this environment, whether you're the leader or you're the team lead or you're the indirect leader, that you create this space where people feel free to ask questions and collaborate and talk. That's like a fundamental thing to innovation. Then once you have that, then you can kind of like add to that innovation by giving people direction and objectives without being prescriptive of how to achieve it, which also yields amazing innovation. When you let people know, here's the outcome you want, the objective or the direction, but you give them the space and autonomy to execute on that, innovation happens. They can come up with new ideas how to approach achieving that objective, and everyone's happier for it, because you know what you need to do, but you have the freedom to achieve it how you and your team can think about doing that.
And what also stood out for me is your fund creates freedom for internal inventors to experiment with innovations beyond the company's core UI or UX products, and of course that immediate need to generate revenue. That approach feels incredibly forward thinking, taking that pressure of having to generate revenue out of the equation. Was that something that was very important to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's super important, because any software product team will tell you, once you start getting customers, and the more customers you get, it slows down the ability to build ideas and to move fast within the software, within building software. And so it is pretty important there, once that without having that requirement of driving revenue, addressing the voice of the customer, adding more features the customer wants, it enables you at a faster pace to realize your vision. And so vision is so important of where you see the value of the product. And we're disciplined where it's not just the vision of how the software should act and feel, but it's also, okay, does it have competitive advantage? Are we adding value to the market? How can we compete with other product solutions in the market? How can we improve the value to customers? Why will they buy our software? And so it adds that dimension of, is there market value? Is there competitive advantage? And is it an addressable market that we can actually achieve entering? And so it's both business and freedom to innovate. And it's really keeping that spark of entrepreneurship alive and well in the company. And like I said, the reason why we've been around for 32 years, 3 decades, which is like 3,000 years as far as I'm concerned in the tech space, is having that culture alive and well in your company.
And if we look back, you've bootstrapped Infragistics 30 years ago or over 30 years ago and have grown it into this multi-million-dollar company that it is today. But what I think is most impressive about all that, you did it the whole thing without taking VC funding. So I've got to ask, what was the main reason that you never accepted outside funding? Is that something you can share?
Yeah, I mean, certainly you reflect back and say, at any point, should have we taken it? But every time it comes back, at least from my thought process, to the same thing, which is if you take money, I mean, it's almost like what you're doing is you're building a project and then you're selling it. And it changes the whole culture that you're building. It changes the whole purpose and attitude of people on your team. And so, and I'm not saying it's wrong and it's right. It is, there's two paths that you could take.
Yeah.
But when you take money, like you have to exit in 5 to 10 years, and you attract different people by taking money, which is a little bit different than what we have at Infragistics, which is people, generally love building software, taking care of customers. And it's about that. It's about doing some really great work and the market appreciating it and delivering value. And so it's a different vibe and experience on the kind of culture you can build, which is a culture of craftsmanship, a culture of do the right thing the first time, a culture of grit. I mean, you have to have grit. Without grit, you can't survive because there's always hurdles and there's always barriers, and there's more of that than successes. But in the end, you do have, then you reach your success, and just a culture of blameless problem solving, collaboration, and innovation. So it's totally different culture. So you can really build a company and a culture of like-minded people that enjoy that, want to do that, versus, you're on a timeline, it's a financial objective, and you're gone. You're not building something sustainable. And then I should say that, okay, you taking money, you can build something sustainable. You can continue on, but it's a different, there is a business driven pressure of 10x, deliver 10x to whatever money I gave you. And now we want 10x growth. We want 20x growth too, for sure. But we're in it for a little bit of a longer haul. And always the customer is first and foremost, and delighting and taking care of the customer.
And another thing I love about your story is how at Infragistics you've thrived through incredible times, really. Major economic recessions, tech bubbles and bursts, and even a global pandemic more recently. So can you tell me a little bit more about how the company has survived and continuously seen success during the most challenging times? Because we will have a lot of startup founders experiencing these kind of problems for the first time. And it'd be great to hear some of your experiences and bouncing back and keep marching forward.
Yeah, so we've had a couple of near-death experiences, which scare the crap out of you for sure. And you're never more alive and experiencing life than when you're feeling that kind of pressure, which is good and bad. Like I don't choose to have that, but part of it is part of life, because you'll have recessions, you'll have challenges. And so our CFO, Chris Rogers, it was kind of amazing how he even chose to join us. He joined us when we were we were legally bankrupt. And so we had $617 in the bank, US dollars, and we had a $580,000 a month expense structure. So every 30 days we had to come up with $580,000. And that's where you learn that sales solves all problems. And so we were just, but Chris Rogers, who's our CFO now, and I knew he was cuckoo when he actually joined us. So he went through a bunch of interviews. And then at the last interview, I had to tell him, I said, look, Chris, we're legally bankrupt. I just have to tell you, we have $600 in the bank and we have all the, and he goes, no, I'm joining you guys. I'm like, okay, so you're crazy enough to join us. Like he believed in, he knew we would make it through it. I knew we would make it through it. He saw the people that were really trying to do good work and really cared and had loyalty. And he saw that we were really going to go for it. I don't know how his wife let him join us because he had this nice offer in New York City, venture funded company, make way more money than we could afford to pay him. But he 18, 19, actually it's probably 20 years later, he's still with us, and he's a great, a great person to stand by you to win and lose together. And so, the advice I have is just that it just takes, there's more problems than successes. And if you have conviction in what you're doing, then you have to have that grit, that commitment to the longer term of fighting through all the problems, and not listening to the naysayers, but hearing what they have to say as problems to solve, and be really focused on fixing the problems, being real with the whole team. So when there's real problems, you have to share it. You can't keep it to yourself. You have to share the real problems with your team so that you're all know what you're up against. You can collaborate to solve them, and just keep punching through it. And that's the life of the entrepreneur. And that it's never easy, but you have to have that conviction and share reality with your team, and then go out and overcome those challenges.
Love that. And if we have any startup founders listening, what would you say are the biggest lessons that you've learned in your career, or any advice that you would pass down to that next generation of founders?
Well, I would say you have to kind of really be clear in your product value and competitive advantage into the market. And then you have to, people call it vision, but you have to really paint the picture of the future, how it looks, how it feels, how it smells. And you have to kind of talk in these affirmations that how you see the future can be, so that everyone can help you build and achieve the way the future looks. So it's not just vision, but it's painting the picture of the future of how everything will be and how great it's going to be as a company and for your customers, and really paint that picture. And then you learn early on I learned early on that the team will always make a better decision. I don't care how smart you think you are, or how smart you are. When you work with a team, they'll always make a bet. The outcome will always be a better decision. And then the other thing I would share is that we also learned earlier, I used to always hire people that thought like me, agreed with me, and it feels good. You hire people that are just like you, and they're the perfect hire, and they're always agreeing with you, which is actually a bad idea. And so you really need to hire diversity of thinking. And so, we're purposely a international company, because we want to have different people, different ideas. Now, it's harder to run your team when you have diversity of thinking. Everyone doesn't agree with you, but you'll make those decisions. If everyone thinks like you, your decision path it's unbelievable. It'll always be like this. But when you have diversity of thinking, you get a different idea, and then you can start building on that idea, and then maybe it's that way. And so, yeah, you have more conflict. It's harder to run a team when everyone doesn't agree, but it's really beneficial if your goal is always to try and come up with the best chances of winning, the best ideas. And so those are some other things I would just share. The team will always make the best decision, and don't hire people just like you. Hire that diversity of thinking so that you get these ideas that are different, that you can build on, that so that you can have the greatest chances of solving the problem and winning.
Love that. Great advice. And like we've said, you've been on an incredible journey here since founding the company in 1989. But a question I always like to ask my guests is there a particular song that has inspired you in your career, helps you get your head in the zone before going on stage, or just reminds you of your career in tech? Because if we look back from 1989 to now, technology has changed tremendously and reshaped our world. But hey, so has music. So my question is, what would be the soundtrack to your journey?
Yeah, so music's always been a big part of my life. I love going to live music. And, the first 5 years I coded on all our products. The last 25 plus years, it's just, it's running the company. But I used to love to listen to Pink Floyd and AC/DC. And it was just so peaceful to listen to that when I'm coding. But I'm a huge fan of Angus, the guitar player in AC/DC, and Thunderstruck. So if you actually, it's just so motivating. Now, if you listen to the exact words, you may not align with what I'm saying, but it's really how I interpret it. So Thunderstruck is is just so powerful. It's like it's either hitting you and hurting you, or it's energizing you, and it's both in the entrepreneurial journey. You're getting struck by thunder that's positive, and you're getting struck by thunder that's negative. And then there's like a lyric in there which is it kind of like it's up to you. You're like, there's no turning back. It's like you got to go forward. And so I just love that. It's my interpretation of thunderstruck. And that I really I love that. That's one of the, I love a lot of songs, but that's one thing I think of, thunderstruck. It fires me up, motivates me, and it has these dual meanings for me, and it's how I'm interpreting the lyrics.
I can't tell you how difficult it is for me to not put a flat cap on now and give you my best AC/DC impression. I saw them live about a decade ago, one of the best bands I've ever seen live. So a great choice.
I've read a lot of autobiographies, and I read a couple of AC/DC autobiographies and Rolling Stones, and it is so analogous to starting a software company. These guys were so into their art and their craft. They practiced day and night. They had to go into these bars where people disrespected them and weren't listening to them. 3 people in the bar throwing stuff at them, but yet they stayed to their craft, and they practiced day in and day out about trying to be the best rock band, the best guitar player, come up with incredible lyrics. And it's that journey. I just love that. I recommend also just reading some of these autobiographies of these rock bands, because it's like the entrepreneur's journey. Like, you're good, but the world doesn't respect you yet, and then you go through such hardship improving your craft, and yet the world still doesn't respect you. And then you finally make it one day, but you're still so committed to the craft, and I just love that. So I just wanted to share that, with you. And
I completely agree with you. And I think one thing that we possibly don't get right in the modern digital world is we only celebrate the end success. So we'll celebrate the AC/DC, that end result, and we'll celebrate the Elon Musk and the end result of what is created. But it's not that slog and that disrespect and everything that shaped them to get them where they are today. It's so important. So I completely agree with you. Get out there and read those books. And I was reading, I think it was about 6 months ago, Roger Daltrey's book, about this time with The Who, and he was talking about back in the day when they had nothing, they had no money, they were actually making their own guitars out of wood, etc., and getting people to make them for them. And it was Keith Moon that he had 3 posters on his bedroom wall. One was a surfer girl, one was Steve McQueen, and one was a rock and roll band. And it was like every morning he would get up and look at those 3 posters. And in the end, he was in the rock and roll band. He lived next door to Steve McQueen and married a surfer girl. So it just shows you stuff like that and how you can make things happen and bring it to life. So
it's awesome. I mean, it's sacrifice and struggle, but beautiful, great things will happen. You got to stay with the grit.
Before I let you go, for anyone wanting to find out more information about Infragistics, contact you or your team, what's the best starting point?
So to contact us, like Infragistics.com, which is kind of hard to spell, but it's Infragistics.com. That's our main website, and that has all of our products linked off of that. And we also Slingshot.io is our website for this really new digital workplace. That's really cool to check out that. Anyone can email me. I'll talk to everybody and anybody. Like I love speaking to people. You can email me directly about anything. Dean G, DEANG @Infragistics.com. Those are some contact points.
Excellent. Well, I'll have those links to the show notes so people can find you nice and easily. Love chatting with you today. Your inspirational story there, how far you've come and done it all without taking any VC funding is amazing. But more than anything, I just loved hearing your story and washed down with some good old-fashioned rock and roll. It doesn't get no better than that. So thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
A huge thank you to Dean for sharing more about how his interest in software development led to his own entrepreneurial journey in the product design industry, and specifically for sharing how he bootstrapped his global software company and is now self-funding a $50 million innovation fund. And also, and in particular, what really stands out is how Infragistics has thrived throughout many major economic recessions and tech bubbles and bursts. And I think these are the kind of stories that we need to hear now, because I know there are a lot of people and a lot of businesses struggling out there. So hopefully today's guest and his story has inspired you a little. And if you're out there and you have a story that you would like to share, I'd love to invite you on here. And that is why I record this show every day. I'm passionate about getting your stories on here, and hopefully we can all learn together along the way. And on that cheesy note, I'm going to ask you to email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn @NeilCHughes. Keep those messages coming in, and I'll be back again same time tomorrow. So all that's left for me to say is a huge thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.